Hi there, Ischa here, and welcome to The Higher Life, where I take concepts that are considered esoteric, spiritual, and new age, and psychological these days, and unpack how you can apply the wisdom, the insight of these concepts to empower your life or to live in a truly empowered way. And today's topic is something that I think will be so pivotal in really helping you to see how your life is playing out perfectly, the conditions of your life, to really support you to thrive and prosper as a human being. But in order to do that, we need to reflect on the true meaning of to thrive or to prosper, because this is something that is, I think, leading us down a very dark path. The kind of concepts that we have attached to as humanity as thriving and prospering probably have very little to do with the true meaning of to thrive and to prosper. So through the work that I've been doing over the last 15 years, I've come to realize, and this is not a new insight, this is insight that wisdom teachings have been attempting to educate humans on for thousands of years. But I've sort of been able to bring it into my own life and simplify it and see it as that, in a way, when we're born as human beings, we're born into two realities at once. And one reality is overlaying the other. So we're born into what I call fabricated reality or constructed reality that we understand as true. It's a collective experience of being human, and it's born out of the human mind. And we're all very familiar with this reality. It's called daily life. Now, in modern times, I call this a marketed reality. It's because it's constructed and reinforced through very, very strong marketing techniques in which every single day we're exposed to messages and images and storylines which have us believing that there's a certain kind of life that we need to aspire to. And that will vary from culture to culture, through gender, viewpoints, and through all these different perspectives or ways that we can view life. So what might be an ideal, successful life in which you are truly thriving, prospering here in the West may be very different to, say, a more tribal perspective somewhere on the other side of the world, or in a more Eastern culture. Every culture has created its own story about this successful life in which you are thriving and prospering, and it kind of dangles it out to the collective and has people use their creative energy in an attempt to live up to that expectation, or perhaps in an attempt to reject that and live at the other end. It's a kind of a duality. If I'm not going to succeed in the way that I've been educated I should succeed, maybe that's a choice, maybe that's because I realized as a child or somewhere along the way that I don't have the right traits or qualities or skills. I'm not born into the right conditions. Maybe you're born into a family system where you don't have the same support as other people at your age group in school, for example. You know, we all know this story too well. We are constantly in a cultural dialogue and in a global dialogue about the fact that some human beings have access to many resources and will have the best possible chance of thriving in the way that the culture has laid out or mapped out what it is to thrive, and they will benefit from the sort of rewards that the culture offers, like money, wealth, education, the right to live where you want, the right to travel, to live in different countries. You know, we know all too well what it's like when you have access and when you don't have access. Now, there's the very obvious forms of access and lack of access, which is access to basic resources, education, housing, health, money. And then we have this other layer of access, which is better understood now, but it's a very new awareness that's being cultivated around the world, which is, you know, what kind of support system are you born into? You know, were you born into a family environment where your basic needs were met, as in your emotional, psychological, and energetic needs? Were you born into a culture which respected your right to be an individual? You know, or were you born into a culture or a family system where your unique identity or your ability to make choices for yourself or for your basic needs to be met was not available or even abused? You know, this playing field in this marketed, fabricated reality is very much unequal. It's created and based, rooted in inequality. Therefore, any type of model of success or a human being that is thriving and prospering in this kind of reality, in the fabricated reality, or is using their talents to reinforce that this is the kind of success and that this is the kind of reality we want to be co-creating, there's always something delusional about that. And anyone who knows me well will know that I can get very riled up when particular celebrities or when particular storylines are being sold into the collective about people who are thriving and prospering and living this perfect life, when every part of me knows that there is no such thing as living a perfect life in this fabricated reality. It is a fabricated story that they are selling to the collective in order to sell something to them, to engage them in a particular belief system, in an attempt to get lots of attention or energy or coming their way. It's a codependency. When we believe as human beings that there is this system that will decide whether we can thrive and prosper, and we need to access the resources in that system or be included in that system somehow, or feed into that system in order to get our little reward, whatever that might be, there is something very unhealthy in that dynamic, even if it appears to be healthy on the surface, on that superficial level. Because the marketed, fabricated reality that we believe is life, and it is manifested in lifestyle or life choices, or whether you're thriving or prospering in this system, there is something inherently disempowering about it. So that leads me to, what is the other reality? Well, this fabricated reality that I'm talking about, it overlays what would be known as the true reality, the natural way, the natural environment, of course, but then there's also this true natural human nature. And I think this one is the one that when people talk about God, for example, they're speaking to this natural human nature, this capacity for resourcefulness, for compassion, for love, for wisdom, for reflection. There's this beautiful inner resourcefulness that every single human being is born with. There is no inequality when it comes to your capacity to live in alignment with nature and to live in your natural way, and to really honor and celebrate and manifest human nature in its refined state, in its powerful state. We all have the capacity for curiosity, for playfulness, for insightfulness, for reflection, for compassion, for empathy. Now, we may not all have equal access to the amounts of it. And that is something that is really, it's a curiosity. And I believe that we are born as souls, and we are born into this reality with different levels of compassion, for example, or empathy, but we have all these other human virtues, and some of us are more naturally strong in them, and others are more naturally strong in other human virtues. But all these human virtues play out in a really positive way in the world. And in this way, we all have an equal capacity to thrive and to prosper. So if you're thriving and prospering in the true reality, your natural true self is really free and open and active out in the world. Now, this marketed reality is still taking place around you. I'm still very much a part of this marketed reality. I'm on Instagram sometimes, and I use social media, and I get drawn into this idea that I need to engage people with who I am and this work. But actually what I've come to realize, and I'm still coming into this realization, is the true way of being in the world is this real natural giving and receiving. So the natural way of giving and receiving actually facilitates an environment in which every single human being will thrive and prosper. Their natural spirit will be of a very high quality. It's such a beautiful way to view yourself in the world and to see what's really going on out there. So this giving and receiving, we always think that we need to give of ourselves into the world and we receive a reward for it. And that reward looks different for different people. Maybe some people think it should be financial and they should have the perfect life. Other people think it's a strong sense of community and belonging. Other people think it's about being charitable and giving of yourself into service to save people who are less fortunate than you. But all of these have a sort of codependency to them. Right, so this giving and receiving, what is it if it's really natural and it's not playing out in the marketed reality, but it's a part of that natural space that I'm talking about? Well, we breathe in as human beings, we're born into the world. So we've already been manifested. We are already here and present. And that is the word about, that is what that word presence is really about. Like when you turn up to class when you're a child and the teacher calls out the roll and you say, I'm present, I'm here, I know that I'm here, I know that I'm open to what's unfolding in front of me, I'm available to this experience. And when you're very grounded in that, you naturally then use your attention to really give of your presence into the experience that you're having in the moment. But most people aren't present. They're still trying to create a version of self that they think is coming if they do all of these things. And that's not thriving or prospering because you are yet to realize that you're already here and fully formed. You're still trying to create a self that aligns with this version of self or this version of human that's very successful in the culture that you've been born into. So your energy is going towards a futuristic self, or it's going into trying to change or manipulate a self that you are that you don't like. But they're both false selves. And then your energy is completely consumed with the idea that you don't live up to the person that you're supposed to be, or the idea that through control and effort and focus, you can become the person that is thriving and prospering in the culture that you've been born into. So you can see how complicated our human experience gets, and all our energy goes into facilitating a version of self that can succeed or avoid failure in this fabricated reality. So we're just living in delusion. And I think that's what the spiritual teachings are about when they say, there's this delusion and then there's this truth. So when you're living in the truth, let's say it's God's way, you're actually engaging with yourself as a present, fully formed human being who is present here on earth. That you have a natural makeup of human virtues that are already within you and will easily and effortlessly translate into whatever it is that you're doing. If you're aware of them, you have that godlike way of being in the world where you naturally exude compassion or kindness or curiosity or playfulness. So you're born in, so you've received this life. You're breathing in oxygen. That oxygen is giving you life force energy. Now, instead of consciously using life force energy to manifest things, to manifest a so-called success through money, through getting attention back into your life, you're actually manifesting particular human virtues. For me, it's a lot of compassion. That's something that I can bring into the world quite easily, or empathy, or gentleness, kindness, or sometimes it's a little bit of boldness, you see. So you're feeding that back into the reality out there, into the vibration. And what it actually does is it increases the quality of the vibration in the collective. So if I'm bringing more of my natural nature into the world, then the world is benefiting from the positive energy. And I'm starting to really feel the thriving, right? You're thriving because you're just expressing your true nature out into the world. The overall collective vibration is lifting and the atmosphere becomes lighter. It becomes more playful. It becomes more passionate and friendly. And that atmosphere is then feeding back into the oxygen that I'm breathing in. So we see this beautiful breathing in and breathing out. We see this bringing in of experience, and that experience is translating into more compassion, more friendliness, more curiosity, more boldness, and that then lifts the atmosphere out there, and the collective is just being raised. And in this, that thriving, prospering is happening naturally. It is so simple. And then you may ask, well, why is there so much conflict and evil? And that's human nature too. And I would suggest to you that perhaps that is an ignorance to our human nature, to our true nature, that when we are living in ignorance of the true purpose of our lives and our true selves, then of course we will operate out of these fabricated selves. And these fabricated selves are delusional, they're mad. And when you see superstars or people who've risen up to great levels of false power, like, Donald Trump is one of them. We've seen leaders over the years, Hitler, you see that fabricated self can become very powerful and very destructive. It has generated this false power, and it wants the world to thrive and prosper in other human beings through this false sense of self, this false sense of security that these leaders are offering their tribes or people. So the ignorance of the true self is in fact what manifests all this conflict and ugliness and violence out there. It is going against your natural godlike nature. So there is no God involved, really. It's the absence of a God, the absence of this awareness of your own true self. Because when you are very aware of your true self, then you become extremely aware and alert to the false selves that are attempting to play out through your life. So that empowerment happens naturally, and you're no longer disempowered from being compassionate, gentle, kind, all of those beautiful, bold. There's ones that are more active and less sort of nice. But, the idea that our true nature is always there, it's always playing out, it's always available. But it's that over-attachment to these false constructed selves that we're born into that takes our attention away from that true source of power and has us playing out in power dynamics and systems that are a false power, a false God, a false human nature. So it's so important in a way to ask this question, what does it mean to truly thrive and prosper? Because it has absolutely nothing to do with how much money you have in your bank account, how many fans you have, how influential you are. A person cleaning a toilet can have much higher levels of compassion and kindness and generosity and playfulness than somebody who is a super celebrity who has, a huge bank account and lots of influence and people adore. They don't adore that person. They adore the image that person is projecting out into the world. And that image is then kind of fueling into this false power system. So we really have to get very alert and very awake to these false identities and this false fabricated reality and start to pull our energy out of it and back into our true self and back into alignment with our true nature and our natural environment. We all know this. Everything in our world is screaming out to humanity to get back on track, to come back into their true nature and to really thrive and prosper in a very natural, effortless way. It's just that the false self, the constructed reality, is the one we've known since birth. It's not easy to see through the veil of this. It requires real work, and a lot of the spiritual teachings have been asking us to take that journey, to be reminded that we are a soul on a soul journey and that we all have equal access to an inner resourcefulness that will thrive and prosper when we just allow it to flow out into the world. It's such an easy, simple way of being in the world, but it's complex and difficult because the fabricated reality has a very strong hold over us. And with recent technologies, it's become much more powerful. You can spend days, lost in Instagram or YouTube or anything and constantly being fed images of people and lifestyles and things that are going on outside your personal experience that either are leading you into chasing a particular version of success to thrive and prosper, or trying to run away from the fear of turning out a particular way in which you would be deemed a failure. It's really tiring and it's all delusional. All evil that we see as evil is born out of this ignorance of the true self and an over-identification, and actually any form of identification with a false self. Once we really get a grip on this, everything will soften and lighten, and our whole atmosphere and energy system, the energy field, will just continually raise and raise its vibration, because more and more people will just bring their true self into their daily life. I can just see it unfolding in front of me. But don't be deluded into thinking it just happens really naturally. I think that there will be these real peaks in violence and peaks in egotistical, narcissistic leaders that we've had over the years, and peaks in this celebrity megastar culture, to bring people into a complete sort of frenzy, so that in that we start to wake up to the true nature, the true self. We see that we can't live in these heightened states of excitement all the time, or fear. We need to come back into a more grounded, natural, healthy way of feeling blissful and enlightened. And that really comes from getting back into our true nature, exploring our natural human virtues, and knowing that all the conditions in our life are serving us to bring more of this into the world. Now, I don't like to do such long lessons, but I always end up in them recently. I just want to finish and add a little bit, taking the lesson a little bit longer, to share something that I noticed in my own life. Now, when I was younger, I had these dual personalities. On one hand, I could really thrive at school and I was really bright and I did well in certain areas. On the other hand, I had all these addictive tendencies. I was partying, using drugs, alcohol. And I kind of noticed that when I binged or had a really bad episode, and I'd wake up and I'd just feel so ashamed potentially, or humiliated, or whatever it was that I was feeling at the time, I would notice this voice would step in, and it would be so kind and so gentle and so supportive, and it would say to me, "You've got this. You're not in a great place right now, but there's a part of you that is always going to be okay, and you're going to transform out of these patterns, out of these addictive patterns." And it would remind me to forgive myself, because I'd been born into a system where those patterns were very alive in me before I'd even had a chance to learn how to manage them in my life. And what I noticed is that often when I was at rock bottom, when I was really in a place of despair, almost a place of extreme futility, I would know that voice would show up more strongly, and it would be there for me. But when I would have these really peak experiences of success out there in the fabricated world, like I would do really well at school, or I would top the state in my HSC, for example, or I would perform really well, I would find it harder to hear that voice. It was almost not present. And it made me realize that sometimes we may have it all upside down in humanity. We have this idea that all those people who are suffering immensely are really disadvantaged, and all those people who are living the high life, the rich life, the wealthy, their comfort, they can go wherever they want, they're the ones who are having the best possible life. But I do realize that in my rock bottom moments, in my moments of extreme loss, I had more access to my true self. She was more available, she was more present, and I cultivated higher levels of my human virtues in those moments than I tended to do when I was really secure and doing well and regarded by others as doing well. Now, that's not to say that I think it's a great thing that people are suffering, or for example in Australia the Aboriginals have had such a disadvantaged experience in this fabricated system. But I wouldn't be quick to judge them as the losers in this situation, the losers in life, because I do think that the people who have been in the dark spaces for longer have had to draw on more of what's naturally available to us, and maybe in the end we'll achieve what we're really here to achieve as souls, which is to live liberated, to know what's what, to see things clearly, to live with wisdom, to live with compassion, to live with self-reflection, to live with the capacity for true tenderness. You will find that communities that are suffering, and I've been in recovery communities, I can tell you that the space that you walk into is so much friendlier, so much more forgiving, It's a much nicer place to be than in some of the offices and really high performing teams that I've been in and worked with and coached over the years. You know, it's you get to be you in those spaces. And maybe it's the fragile you, but I've had the best laughs and really good times with some of the people that I befriended through these recovery groups. So, you know, we need to wake up and not see things as black and white. It's funny, you know, as good and bad, victim and perpetrator. The true nature is the real power in our world, you know, so that natural environment, it's always going to be there. It'll be there. It was here before humans came, and it will be here after humans leave. The human experience is creating through the mind a fabricated reality that we then need to kind of move through in order to realize it's a delusion and return back home to our true self. And in this, you will naturally learn that thriving and prospering is when your true self is fully recognized as the only source of power in your life. And then you embrace that and become almost majestic, breathing out into the world that natural, unique set of human virtues that make up who you are as a human being, and breathing in this quality of life force that has been raised by the vibration of people who are breathing out this positive regard for humanity, for nature, and for the true self. So if you like this work and this is something that you would like to do more of, check out Higher Life Academy. I offer a very simple pathway back into your true self. Or subscribe to Higher Life TV, access more free videos. Until next time, take care and love life.